What's up, guys? So I want to talk to you about something that's very important, and a lot of you guys struggle with this. And this goes for everyone. This goes for men, women, no matter like what your age is. Your age is. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's something that I've dealt with as well. And let's get right into it. So the topic of this video is you are not your mistakes, or something along those lines. And this is such a important discussion that we need to have, especially as men who are on the path to self-development and we want bigger things out of life and we have ambitions, we have goals, we have dreams, we have a vision for how we want our life to turn out. This is something that holds a lot of us back because when you think about it, as you reflect upon your life, you have multiple instances of where you have fallen short and you've done things that you're not proud of, or maybe not even things that you're not proud of, but things that did not go the way you had planned. And you just have that sense of like regret and just like, oh, like, if only, this thing worked out that certain way, then I would be in a much better position. Or like, oh, like if I had, gone to that school or gotten that job, or like, things had worked out in a certain way, the way I had planned them, then my life would be totally better, and like I wouldn't be dealing with these petty problems I'm dealing with right now, with like, either money issues or family issues or whatever the case is. Like, we that occupies our mind, and it doesn't just take up mental space, but it also prevents us from moving forward, because we look back at those things and we're like, oh, like, I can't believe I did that. And, like, I don't see the path forward, and things are not the way they should be. So we go through this whole, like, mental thing that goes on with us. So I want to, first of all, kind of share some things that I've been through, and just, if anyone relates to them, then, hope you find this useful and something that you can bring into your own life. So a big thing that I had always wanted to do, or like, let me be honest, like, it was something that I thought I should do, is as I was in college and I was like going through like the pre-med track, and I was taking all these classes and doing all this, like, research and all this kind of stuff. I was like, I want to, get into medical school and become a physician. But like the big thing that I didn't know about that career path was, I just didn't have any experience around it. I wasn't like, I knew what a doctor did, obviously, but I didn't know what that entailed specifically in terms of like what your commitment is to your patients, and like what you need to be doing just through the training and the medical residency and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I even took like the MCAT, got like a 98% at score. So like in terms of from an academic standpoint, like I was on that path to get there. Um, and it wasn't until like I started working in a hospital as a clinical research coordinator that I got to see what the life of a doctor is really like. Granted, I was in their shoes. I wasn't like, actually doing the things that they were doing, but I was working very closely with them. And I was there for like 3 years. Part of it was during COVID, so like, that was, an interesting experience. But while I was there, while I was in the hospital, like 40 hours a week, something that became very abundant to me was like, I didn't want someone else to be dictating my schedule. And I know that sounds like very, like, oh, here's another guy who wants to make money online and, do all the thing. But at that time, like, I was just like so immersed, like outside of work, and even like sometimes at work, just like on my lunch break, I'll be listening to like podcasts and just like YouTube videos and just all these different things, because for the first time in a long time since college, I finally had time to like not do homework and not do stupid assignments and actually learn more about life. Not just my own direct experience, but also just about what other people were sharing in terms of like, oh, this is how finances work. This is how, your mentality should be as a man. This is how fitness works. Like all these different things, I started learning them right around 2018 or so. And after seeing what was possible if you decide to venture on your own path and you decide to create a life of your own choosing, I was like, I can't see myself becoming a physician, regardless of like how well I did in terms of like scores and all that kind of stuff. I just couldn't see myself doing it. And if you're a physician, if you're someone who's on this path and you are totally in love with it, I mean, all the more power to you, because that's something that you feel very strongly to, and you're very, you are all about that path. So definitely go for it. Don't take my advice as like a prescription, or like, oh, maybe I should reconsider what I'm doing. No, make your own decision when it comes to this. But and even as part of this process, like I decided to apply to med school, and I went through the whole process, wrote the essays and all that kind of stuff, but it just didn't work out. Um, and I'm putting this out there because for someone who was on this like very scripted path to becoming a well-paid professional, and having all this influence and being able to impact lives and all that kind of stuff, like being in that space where you're just like, okay, what do I do now? Like, it was very uncomfortable. It was very, and you can imagine all the conversations, especially coming from like a Desi background. It's like, oh, like you let the family down because you didn't go to med school. Like, it's such a I get why it's there in terms of like, parents want their kids to like succeed and all that kind of stuff. Like the the mindset, or just like the, how do I put it? Like the intent is is well meaning. Like, I wouldn't want my kids to be bums. Like, I want them to succeed in life. But what I also understood was that I just could not see myself going forward with this path for my own personal reasons. Um, and just looking back at that, like I'm just like, maybe if I put a bit more effort in, maybe if I did things a certain a way, like I could have gone in somewhere and things could have worked out. Like, I wouldn't be in the space where I'm like, creating my, my career, just my path in life from the ground up, and there's no real blueprint. Like, there isn't a school for entrepreneurship, or just like, becoming like an entrepreneur YouTuber. There isn't really a school, like a accredited institution in that regard. So it was just really just this, like, where do I go from here? And yes, I decided to take up a master's program in biotechnology because it was just like, okay, like I'm still, let me find like a career that works in that sense, and let me see what that can make, what I can make of that. And even with that, like I'm still in the space of like, I want to do my own thing, and I want to create a life of my own choosing. And a lot of people might see this as like, like, why don't you just pick something? Why don't you just go ahead with it and just like not like, be worried about like, what your life is going to look like and all this kind of stuff. um, but I'm sticking to my guns because I know that if I give this, the effort that it is required, I will be able to make something of this. And not to mention that I have mentors and people in my life who have done the things that I want to do. So it's not like I'm completely shooting in the dark. I have a path that I'm working towards. That's just like in the career space. And when you come to like things, when it comes to like your relationships, or like finding love, all that kind of stuff, like, even, just like every other guy, like I made mistakes in terms of like, not being able to give someone, the intention and just the care that someone needed. And I'm fully cool with like putting it out there, like, like just that part of like being immature and not being, fully comfortable, um caring for someone and loving someone. Like, it's something that a lot of people struggle with, not just men. So I'm not saying like I fully overcome that, otherwise I'd be married and just like have someone in my life. um Maybe just like having more of a well built plan, like, in terms of like where I'm going ahead with my life. Like, maybe that's part of it, but maybe I'm just like, maybe that's a self like limiting belief. I don't know where I stand on that specifically. Um, but even with that, like, I look back, I'm like, maybe if I just, push a little harder, and maybe I was like more honest and just kind of stuff, I would have something in someone in my life. And I wouldn't be like in the space where I'm just like, oh, like, where do I go from here? Like, do I even try to find someone? Like, what's my path right now? So I'm sharing all of this to bring the point home, to drive the point home, that you are not your mistakes. You are not the things that you have gone wrong in your life. And I'm not even like talking about like all the good things that have come out of like this like this fog that I've kind of been walking through in my during my entire 20s. Like, just the people I've met, and just like the the just the time I've been able to put into my own physique, and just like working out and all that kind of stuff. I know it sounds like, oh, like, of course, like anyone could get in shape. Like, you don't have to not go and like, not like, you can get in shape while you're in med school. Like, that's something that I have thought about a lot. But it's just like, maybe I wouldn't take it as seriously. Maybe I wouldn't be as invested into not just taking care of myself, but like also serving people and actually helping people. Like, two of my clients are physicians right now. And it's kind of wild, like like being in the space where I'm actually coaching physicians and like actually helping them get over something, which that's a whole other thing of like, shouldn't doctors know how to get in shape? Like, shouldn't they be the most jacked people on earth? That's a whole separate thing. Maybe we can talk about it some other time. But really, it's just understanding that your path is something that you cannot predetermine, and you can't chart out the perfect path in life, because that's not life. Life is not supposed to be charted out of your own choosing. Yes, when it comes to when you bring, the religious aspect to it, as a Muslim, like, we understand that our lives are predetermined, and there are certain things that we can do to alter the course of that through prayer and dua, and just like, having that connection with Allah. But to a large extent, how our life goes is predetermined, and that's something we don't know. We don't know like what that entails specifically. But we shouldn't play God when it comes to this. We shouldn't like have this like almost ego and arrogance of like, oh, like things should go my way, and if they don't go my way, like, something's wrong with me as a person. There's nothing wrong with you as a person if things don't go your way. There's so many people in life where they had a certain idea, or even like a certain, just a vague idea of how their life was supposed to turn out in their own minds, but it didn't work out that way, for better or for worse. We have to understand that it's not always positive, and there are things that will come into your life which are just like totally out of the blue. You just did not expect them. You're just like, hey, like, why did this happen? um, and it's really like there's a whole process of development that comes from that. As a man on your journey, as a man who's on this path to becoming the best version of himself, you have to understand that it's not the things that happen in your life that determine what your life is going to look like. It's your reaction, it's your mindset to that. I know that sounds like another cliche thing, but these things are so true. They're cliches. They're like these things that you kind of hear and you're just like, oh, whatever. Like, give me like the real, like, A to Z how to guide on this. But it really just comes back to the like, what's your mindset around this? I can say confidently as a Muslim that I have a deep sense of gratitude for how things have turned out in my life. Yes, there will be moments where I'm just like, oh, like I get into that negative self-talk, but by and large, over the past like couple of years, I'm just like, I've come to just accept and appreciate and feel grateful for how life has turned out. And I know that it's not only because of like coming to terms with a lot of the things that have happened, but also it's like the process of like development that I've been undertaking. And that's why like a huge part of this has been fitness. That's why like I'll always be passionate about fitness regardless of what my life looks like and what I do going forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years. This will always be a cornerstone thing that you guys have to embody. Like, you guys have to start with your body, because if your mind is getting in the way of you pushing towards the next level, you have to almost like shut up the mind by punishing your body. Because there's never been a moment where like I've been deadlifting like, a crazy amount, or overhead pressing something crazy, and I'm feeling depressed in that moment. I'm like overthinking. It's impossible to overthink when you have like hundreds of pounds on your back, or hundreds of pounds that, if your form is off, it could topple and possibly crush you. You're never overthinking. You're never depressed. You're never anxious in that moment, because you're fully present. You're in flow, and you are totally immersed in making sure that your survival is maintained, and you grow from this experience. That's why fitness, like, I don't understand why guys don't get in the gym, or if they are in the gym, why aren't they on pushing themselves, and there's just like, you know pushing like the same 20, 30 pound dumbbells for like years on end. Like, I don't get that. But I don't want to turn this into a rant about fitness. So I hope I'm making that point clear of like, you are not your mistakes. And the only way to really overcome that, in terms of if you wanted a tactical how to, is to really sit with yourself and really deeply analyze like what your path has been up to this point. And vision is 20, looking backwards, like, vision is 2020. And you have to understand that there was a thread, like a fine thread, that was leading you towards all of this. And you could, if you're religious, if you're Muslim, you understand that that was Allah's plan, like that was God's plan through all of this. But even if you're not at that point, you just have to understand that there is a thread that you can chart out a path of all the things that you've done and where you've been in life. And it's once you look back at the path and you look back and you look now at the present moment, you can decide that today, right now, this present moment is where everything changes. Everything changes and it's going to be of my own choosing. I know like that contradicts what I said in the beginning, but it's really making that firm commitment in terms of like, hey, like, I'm not my mistakes. They don't have to define what I've done up to this point. In fact, I can use them as resources, as part of my story that will better inform what I'm going to do from this point onwards, and not like hold me back, and not be the reason why I can do something, but it will be the reason I can. It's because of all these things that had to happen that I learned certain things about myself, about other people, about life in general. And I wouldn't have these perspective, changing experiences if I didn't have these. Like I wouldn't be ready to start on the path. Because if you think about it in terms of like a video game, there's always a tutorial like aspect to this. Like I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom, like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for like the longest time. Like I've replayed it so many times, and I don't want to spoil it, but obviously, but like you start out on like this, this island in the sky, and you have to go through certain things. You have to acquire certain skills before you're able to leave that island, and you're able to take on the real journey and the real adventure. And if you don't go through that and you're just like, why am I stuck on this island? Like, why do I have to like, why can't I just like go where I need to go? That you would, if in a video game, you would die. You died instantly if you didn't have this training as part of, your story. See your life up to this point as you being in that tutorial, as you being on that island. And it's only when you decide that, okay, like I have the resources now to finally go on the main adventure that I've just not been on, that's when life becomes interesting. That's when life becomes of your own. You're able to commit to certain things, and you're able to give them. You're able to say like, this is of my own choosing now, regardless of how life actually plays out, because that's a whole other thing. Like we can't control that, but you can finally decide that, okay, this is how things are going to be now. I have certain things that I want to achieve, and I'm going to use up everything that I've done that I've either done or has happened to me as part of. It's going to be part of my toolkit now, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever. Like it's going to be part of my toolkit, and I can use that whenever a similar situation comes up. For myself, I know what to do in this scenario. But the biggest thing, the only like the thing that will put your story on steroids is really being able to use those lessons for someone else. When you see someone else in a similar situation, and you're like, "Hey, bro, like I've been through this. Like, let me tell you like how I overcame this." Like that's why I told you like the stuff that has happened in my life, because I'm like, hopefully maybe you've experienced something similar in terms of like your career or your love life or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, okay, like that's how he went through it, and that's how he's seeing things. So like maybe that can help me. Maybe I should see things in a certain way." That's part of why I shared that. So I don't want to drag this video on too long, but I want to put this out there because this was something that was on my mind, and I know a lot of you guys do struggle with this. And if you're a man who has been struggling with this, or you know of someone who really is not able to just get over the mental barrier of like, hey, like I identify with my mistakes, send this video to them. Hopefully, it helps them out. But I'm gonna end it right there. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in, for all the support, all the love you've been showing me. Like this journey, yes, I'm not the most consistent when it comes to YouTube, just because I have other things I'm trying to put in place, and I haven't really solidified a schedule with this. But inshallah, the hope is that I'm doing daily uploads at some point. It gets to that point at some point in this year. So, like this video, comment, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Share with a friend who needs this kind of advice, and hopefully, we can get to a point where we're growing and we use everything in our life to our benefit. Thank you so much, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one.